Hello my friends, it's Dan. Welcome back. Welcome to another plastic miniature review, this time for the 18th century Sloop model produced by Firelock Games for their Blood and Plunder range. And as with all of my sponsored content, I want you to know up front this is sponsored because Firelock sent this to me to review for you. So thank you Firelock again for your ongoing support of the channel. This is now our 5th Blood and Plunder review, and this is very unusual, not only for Blood and Plunder, but for the channel, frankly, because this is one large scale model. It's a, a vehicle, if you will. So this is going to be interesting to go through and look at with you guys. I'm going to follow kind of the same format that I normally do, but I think for like scale purposes, I'll be mostly bringing in other figures to like put on the deck of the ship to show you just how big this thing is. Speaking of big, this box is ridiculous. I thought about changing my setup, but I figured we wouldn't really be looking at the box for that long. But it's definitely the largest box that I've been sent. And you can see on the back here, it shows you that there's 2 different ways to make it. And there's actually some instructions on that and some cards for the Blood and Plunder game as well. So if you get this box for yourself, what you're going to receive inside is a big old stack of sprues. I mentioned these little cards here that have something to do with Blood and Plunder. So there's one for the Bermuda Sloop, and there's one for the Balandra, with some trade info in the back there for you, if you care about that information. So very nice cards. There's also a instruction sheet, which is reasonably straightforward. There's no like numbering system on any of the bits, but you can see there's, despite appearances, there's actually not that many pieces to this because a lot of it are these large parts of the hull and the deck, and then everything else is kind of just like an accessory piece. So I think it's actually going to be reasonably straightforward to put together. And then the main event is a stack of unique sprues here for the miniature itself. So if you're new here, welcome. What we're going to do is look at each of these sprues in detail. I normally give like bits breakdowns, but that's not really relevant in this case. So I'll just show you the details as they sit on the sprue. I'm going to assemble this model. I mentioned that I want to really do some scale comparisons with different manufacturers kind of on the deck of the ship, so I'll figure out a way to film that for you. And then I'll end up giving you my final thoughts at the end. So it is a lot of plastic here, so I think the way I'm going to do this is kind of work my way up the ship, if you'll permit me. I gotta say too, like I've dealt with scale models in the past, like mostly in the like 135 scale range for World War II era tanks, etc. And this is up there in production quality. Very nice rendering, like on the wood grain in particular. I think it looks great. Really nice crisp cutoffs for, again, these parts of the hull that are different, right? Kind of like a different material or a different texture. It looks really, really good. So let me show you a shot of the front and the back of the sprue here, as I normally like to do. So all of this bit here, I'm kind of running out of space. All of this here appears to be for just the main hull itself. So again, little details here, like the kind of decorative elements. They go on, it looks like the bow of the ship, which is cool. Some little bits here and here. Very nice. Oop. And then we've got this piece that is for the deck of the ship. And I'll show you this one. Same production notes apply. This is really, really good from a detail standpoint. Minimal flash. There's really no place for mold lines. Like I'll take a look on the mast when we get to that sprue, just to see if there's anything like running down the side, as you would expect. But yeah, even look at the depth of this sprue. I guess you can't really see it again. It's gigantic. But it all looks great. The grading here, it's going to be a blast to paint up, I think. And again, it seems clear, like I don't even really need the instruction sheet. I'll certainly consult it, but it seems to go together in a really intelligent way. And then here we go. This is most of the accessory bits, the stuff that's going to go on the deck. So I'll show you this one too. You know what it really reminds me of? This, if you guys played like Mordheim, remember the Mordheim starter set that came with that accessory sprue? That could be used to like upgrade buildings and make chests and stuff. That's kind of the feeling I get from this. Obviously this is historical content that we're going for here, but get the same feeling looking at these sprues. They look so good. Again, look at the detail here on these bits. Right, the rendering on like the glass versus the wood grain. It looks really great, I think. And they got this little mermaid piece here, anchor. It's all the bits that you would want. And as I said, the instruction sheet makes clear where this stuff all goes. And then there's a separate sprue. This is the final sprue to look at here, that contains the porthole covers and the cannons. It looks like there are 16 cannons, or it looks maybe 8 cannons and 8 swivel guns. So let's take a look at this. Again, mostly just to look at detail. So once again, like even just little bits on like the doors here that would cover up the cannon wells. I don't remember what those are called. I'm going to call them portholes. But yeah, fantastic rendering, all the little bits and bobs. The cannons look great. I almost wish they'd sell like a separate standalone cannon set. Like just snip this part of the sprue off with these gun wheels. Or even just sell this sprue separately. Maybe they do. But it looks fantastic. So pretty straightforward in terms of sprues. There's lots of plastic to dig through here. So let me do that now. I'm going to cut. There's no conversion work to do. I just want to build this ship and show you how it looks. I think I'm going to reposition this camera to give you a better view of the final product. So one note here at the assembly phase that stood out to me anyway. Again, it's been probably like 12 years, maybe more, since I've put together a scale model, like maybe like a Sherman tank back in my 20s. But first of all, the quality is great, like really nice, sturdy plastic. You know, I'm sure we've all, if you've done any scale modeling, dealt with like, you know, really thin plastic. It's not super pleasant to deal with. This is nice, high quality plastic. It's the same material that the regular soldiers are made from, but they also make these really easy to go together, because you can see this back piece is supposed to connect up here, and you can see not only does it conform nicely, but it's got a notch here to align things. So like, again, if I threw some glue on there, look how neatly that fits in. And again, I'm only applying light pressure there, but you can see it's not wiggling at all, so it will basically locks together, which is fantastic. So anyway, I didn't think I'd be able to demonstrate that once the model was assembled, so I wanted to just throw this little note in here while I'm still putting her together. So before we look at our ship, is it a boat? Because there's no other boats on board it. I don't know how that works. I'm going to call it a ship. They sent me a blister pack containing some resin figures that I did want to show you, in particular to show you how they scale up. So again, these are resin, and with a little bit of like hot water, you could bend that back in place if you've never dealt with it before. But the detail, I think, is excellent. And I'll show you in a moment that they scale up really well with their plastics, which should be no surprise. Feels sturdy too. If you've never dealt with resin before, some of it, I mean, it's all on the brittle side compared to plastic, but it holds detail very well. And this stuff feels pretty sturdy. Like, I'm not worried about, like dropping a pike and having it snap. So yeah, I think they look cool. And it all came in the same blister pack, but this almost seems like a different figure, like a character model. It would make for a pretty excellent captain, I think. Again, look at the detail on this guy. Really cool. And here she is, all built up. I'm going to maneuver the camera just for a second so you can see her in all of her splendor. And I will do an overhead shot as well, but for the purpose of this initial discussion, I thought it would be easier to do my side view format. So first of all, dimensions. Let's talk about that. I've got this little ruler here that is 12 inches long, so it's a foot long. And you can see she's about 9.5 inches long and just a little over 4 inches wide in the center there. And it was so easy to put together. It took me like maybe an hour and a half, something like that. And that seems like a long time for one model, but for anybody that's put together any kind of like, again, vehicle, if you come from either scale modeling or even like, I guess if you put together a 40K vehicle, you'll know that's not long at all. And I've certainly dealt with scale models before, especially when we're talking about ships, where it can take days because there's so many little fiddly bits. And that's maybe my main observation here is that it certainly is a ship. It's a scale model of a ship, but it goes together more like a terrain piece, which makes sense too because it's meant to be interactive and have some figures go inside of it, which we'll get to in a minute. But that the experience was less putting together a scale model of a ship, right? And it was more like putting together a Games Workshop terrain piece. If anybody ever put together like their Manor, you know, those plastic terrain pieces that they released, that was more the feeling of the experience in terms of technical requirements and time investment. On that note, I guess I really only have like one criticism of the set, which I want to get out of the way here at the beginning, and that is that these instructions, which I showed you guys earlier, are just too small, is the short of it. I really didn't find that I needed them that much, especially for the larger pieces, but like some of these small bits, like can anybody here tell me what that is? No, I mean, you can't. So, fortunately, again, I was able to suss out just about everything, but certainly, like, this top piece up here was, I don't know, I was just kind of eyeballing it. But you can also see, too, again, from glancing at the instructions one more time, that there's really not that many pieces to this, which is good. That's not a criticism. There are scale model ships that can have thousands of pieces to them, right? Whereas this is like probably like 75 pieces total, even counting some of the smaller bits. So, it's really not that intense, which is a good thing. And again, you can see from the deck construction that there's not a lot of clutter there in the middle, which is good because again, this is intended as a wargaming piece. So otherwise, again, aside from the fact that the instructions I felt were a little bit lacking, it required kind of some intuition on my part. Other than that, I think it was really easy to put together. The only other quirks were like in the assembly of the deck, and this is actually clear if you look at the instructions, but that they want you to put the deck together first and then assemble the hull around it because it conforms very nicely to the deck. So I found that it was kind of difficult to smash the deck down in once the hull was constructed. So little bits like that. And the only other issue, again, if we're just quibbling at this point, is that these little porthole covers don't really fit inside of the portholes. And it's funny because looking at the picture on the side of the box, it doesn't look like their constructed versions have them. So I don't know if they were a late add, but they don't really fit inside of the portholes. So I'm probably just gonna leave them off on mine, or I'll like glue them so that they're up because they don't fit flush into the squares. Actually, I tried once and ended up losing a porthole cover inside of the captain's quarters there. But I think this looks so good all assembled. What it really inspires me to do is use it as like a centerpiece for a Mordheim board. Lots of room on the deck here too for miniatures if you wanted to. These swivel guns I glued so that they're kind of like not in the way, going out onto the deck. But I think you could squeeze quite a bit in here. Do some kind of like shipboarding action. You can see two of these lined up side by side. Have people fighting across ships, maybe with some planks going in. So plenty of room to play with. I guess that would be the only consideration again when you're gluing it together. I mentioned that I glued my swivel guns so that they're kind of like off to the side. But it comes with these little cannons too. They were very easy to put together. It comes with 8 of these. And I don't know that I would glue them down. I don't think they're intended to, because again, you want to be able to move them around so that you can use it as a play piece still. But it's good to have that option, other than maybe like inside of the captain's quarter there. But they're nice as little like scattered terrain pieces. I think they look pretty cool. Just showing off some more of the hull here. Again, I'm really impressed with the level of detail that was achieved. One other note is that it doesn't come with any kind of like rigging or sails, which is no surprise. I'm going to paint this up eventually, and I think I'll actually look at some tutorials on sails and rigging for scale ships, but using some kind of like, probably like soaked cloth and even just string I think would be good scale, but even paper in a pinch. We've done tutorials on paper banners before, but I'd be curious to see some expert opinions on how best to do that. So I did want to show you that these resin figures from Firelock, and resin figure on the left, plastic crew model on the right. Sorry for the lighting again. I'm playing around here because this is a big ship. These scale up perfectly if you were curious. So I think that they are an excellent addition there. And this isn't, again, a particularly useful scale comparison, but again, knowing the dimensions, I also wanted to show you how these various figures look. A couple of different manufacturers here. But I think there is lots of utility for this ship beyond just Blood and Plunder, for which it would be excellent. Again, I had mentioned for any kind of like RPGs, display board use, lots of other skirmish games. So what's the final verdict? I love this thing. This is so cool. Again, it really goes together more like a terrain piece than a scale model. So don't let it intimidate you. If you've never done any like scale modeling before, this is a real user-friendly experience putting this thing together. No, again, that means necessarily it's not going to have as much detail as some of the higher-end scale figures come with in terms of all the rigging, all the little accessories that you might want in a scale model of a ship. This is intended as a gaming piece. So, again, what you get in exchange for that is, I think, a very reasonable amount of detail. You get a very user-friendly experience putting it together. And I think the price is right. Again, I do talk about price now pretty constantly, but I don't normally assign value. Again, I think that that's for you guys to decide. I'll show you the model, and you can determine if it fits your budget, if it fits whatever project you're considering using this for. But I'll be candid that I thought this was more expensive than it is. On the website currently, it's $39 US for this piece, which is, again, a reasonably large, very well detailed, I think, gaming piece that would be excellent not only for Blood and Plunder, but I mentioned games like Mordheim, other RPGs, Middle-earth strategy battle game, like certainly any fantasy application is going to work here just fine, but there's tons of skirmish level games that exist that would do well to have really could pass for a late 17th century ship all the way up into the 19th century. So I can think of tons and tons of uses for this, even just to have in your collection. So think about it. I got a link down in the description to the Firelock site. Massive thanks again to Firelock for sending this our way to take a look at together. I think this is a really cool piece, and I'm excited to see if they add anything else into this part of their catalog. I can see like some smaller boats, maybe a slightly larger ship of some kind. They did say that they're not planning on putting out any other plastic kits in the near future. They're going to be focusing on resin sets, but we'll keep an eye on the range. Appreciate all of you for dropping by for this one. In the meantime, lots of review content to come. It's gonna be nonstop for a little while here, so stay tuned for all that. Appreciate you all. Till next time, happy gaming.